so far removed from the idea of America and its minarchism written in the United States Constitution, where we have to bring her back to where she belongs. Thank you for listening to this episode of Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy. And welcome to Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy. I am your host, Mr. Roderick Threets, the man with the brilliant mind, as some people have called me here recently. I won't let that go to my head, though, because, around here we only speak on what we know. We don't know what we don't know, right? And we only come into knowing when we understand the knowledge that has been given to us to be understood. I want to thank y'all for stopping through this evening and all that good stuff as we continue this series, this Shield of Liberty. Over the last 6 episodes, we have constructed a vision of a minimal state defense. Okay. A lean, market-driven, and decentralized machine. But today, what we're going to look at is the elephant in the room. I know some of you are wondering who or what is that elephant in the room. We have to talk about the weapon that ended the era of traditional warfare and changed the meaning of sovereignty forever. The nuclear bomb. For the advocates of a minimal state, the nuclear atom is a quite perplexing paradox. On one hand, the state's only legitimate function is the protection of individual life and property, right? On the other hand, a nuclear weapon is the ultimate maximalist tool. It is by design a weapon of indiscriminate mass destruction. I think the ethical question we must pose here is, can a state that claims to be minimal justify holding the power to end civilization? Let's pull that back. More importantly, in a world where aggressive dictatorships and great power empires, they possess these weapons, can a tiny non-interventionist state survive without them? Today, we are exploring the nuclear shield. We're going to discuss why a porcupine needs a nuclear sting, right? The ethics of deterrence under the non-aggression axiom, and how we can manage the ultimate responsibility without turning the state into a monster. So before we get started, y'all guys go ahead and make sure you like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you're not on the Patreon, make sure you go to patreon.com/TOLMF. Make sure you're sharing this out with your peeps. All that good stuff, so we can send a good message of true liberty to all. Because Lord knows we have a country to save. And I can't do it by myself. I need y'all's help. So make sure you're sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. And greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate that. Now, let's talk about the porcupine's sting, right? And as an effective method to equalize the giants, right? So let's start with the strategic why. Okay. Why would a minimal state, which has no interest in global empire, spend a single cent on a nuclear arsenal? And the answer lies within the great equalizer effect. Now, throughout history, small free nations have been at the mercy of massive authoritarian neighbors, right, who could simply overwhelm them through the sheer weight of metal, more tanks, more bodies, more planes, right? In a conventional world, the minimal state would be forced to maintain a massive, expensive, and liberty threatening standing army just to survive. Well, nuclear weapons changed that math, right? Nagasaki and Hiroshima changed that math because they are the no button of geopolitics, right? By maintaining a survivable nuclear deterrent, a small state can say to a global hegemon, "We will never threaten your borders. We will never interfere in your politics. But if you attempt to violate our sovereignty or wipe us off the map, the cost to you will be total." This, I would call it a strategic moat, allows a tiny state to exist in peace alongside giants. It is the ultimate guarantee of sovereignty that actually allows the military to stay minimal at home because the great threat of total cost replaces the need for total mobilization. Let me repeat that again for the warmongers that may be listening, right? This is the ultimate guarantee of sovereignty that actually allows a military to stay minimal at home because of the threat of total cost or shared mutual destruction, right? Now, in all of this, let's address the ethical tension here, right? The non-aggression axiom and the nuclear bomb. I know this is kind of complex or perplexing, but please hang with me a second, right? Because there is a moral rot at play here, right? Because if libertarianism is rooted in the non-aggression axiom, right? And those of you that don't remember, the non-aggression axiom basically is the idea that it is always wrong to initiate force against an innocent person. But nuclear weapons themselves present the ultimate challenge to the non-aggression axiom. Because if an enemy state attacks us and we retaliate by nuking their capital, we aren't just hitting the guilty leaders. We're vaporizing millions of innocent civilians, children, doctors, dissenters who had no say in the war. So the ethical question we must ask is, how can a state founded on individual rights justify a weapon that kills by the million? Right? The answer is actually, and I'm gonna end up writing something. I'm in the middle of writing something on this because I don't have a whole episode. This explaining this principle is going to take a whole episode by itself. And I know people like to read and understand things written out in front of them instead of spoken word a lot of times. So the answer to that question is found in what's called the doctrine of counterforce and intent, right? The doctrine of counterforce and intent. We move away from, right, the Cold War model of mutual assured destruction, which intentionally targeted cities to maximize horror, right? Instead, a minimal state's nuclear deterrent is strictly focused on counterforce, targeting the adversary's actual ability to wage war, their silos, their military hubs, and their command bunkers. So, under the doctrine of counterforce and intent, right, we would argue that the existence of the deterrent is the only thing that prevents the ultimate violation of rights. Call it nuclear blackmail. We don't hold these weapons because we want to use them. We hold them so that the world remains a place where individual rights can be protected without a tyrant holding a nuclear gun to our head. It is a grim defensive necessity in a world that is not yet ready for total peace. Now, let's talk about the command and control structure. Now, I know this is moving along kind of quickly. This part here is pretty short, guys. So, because there's not a lot to elaborate on, this is very, very, very straightforward. What this is, there's no nuance when it comes to this part, right? Because again, infringing on other innocent people's rights, right, is a no, right? And another country imposing on our property rights is a no also, right? So this is why this episode is going to be very straightforward, maybe 20 minutes long, but it's enough information for you to understand with that. So, but again, let's talk about the command and control structure, right? Literally decentralizing the lack of other terms, big stick, right? The question is, right, the question we must ask is, how does a minimal state manage this power without creating a nuclear dictator? Now, in our current system in the United States, right, the president has the football, right? The sole authority to launch a global apocalypse, right? Literally, this is the antithesis of a minimal state, right? In our model, the nuclear shield is governed by constitutional locks. We move away from the offensive ready posture of our current military industrial complex because we don't need first strike capability. We focus on the survivable second strike, right? A small fleet of nuclear armed submarines hidden in the deep ocean, which only act if our soil is struck first. Okay. Furthermore, we discuss decentralized command. We propose that the launch authority be split. It shouldn't just be one man or woman in a suit, or would have been in 2016 a pantsuit. But anyway, um, it should require a triad of consent, right? The executive, a representative council of the states, and a judicial review of the defensive trigger. We ensure that the sword is locked in a box that can only be opened when the nation's very existence is being liquidated. By making the process slow, transparent, and purely reactive, we prevent the nuclear shield from ever being used as a tool of political bullying. Now, let's talk about the exit strategy here after such a thing, right? Because there's a thing that I've called disarmament through innovation, right? The final point of this is the long game, right? A minimal state doesn't love the bomb. It tolerates it as a temporary bridge to a safer future, right? Now, I would argue that the best way to move towards global disarmament isn't through treaties signed by dictators who have no intention of following them. It's through defensive technology, right? As we discussed in the previous episode, right? Episode 6, I think it was, right? As we led the world in active defense missile interception, laser based shields, and the cyber hardening, the offensive value of a nuclear missile begins to evaporate. When a free technological society builds a shield so advanced that a missile can never reach its target, the nuclear weapon becomes an obsolete, expensive paperweight, doesn't it? We don't ban the bomb through a UN resolution, we out innovate it. We prove that a free society can build a shield so strong that the sword of the 20th century becomes a relic of a primitive, more violent age. I want you to think about that. So today, as we wrap up episode number 7, okay, look at that hand holding the shield at the bottom of the logo a second. It is a heavy, terrible burden. It represents the ultimate power that the state, even a minimum one, is forced to carry. In a minimal state, we don't pretend that this power is good. Okay? We acknowledge it as a dangerous, necessary tool. For the defense of our country in an imperfect world. We hold the big stick so that we can walk in peace, trade, and freedom and ensure that the shield of liberty is never shattered by a force we are too principled to deter. I want to thank y'all for joining me for this quick conversation. I know it's a quick episode because, again, like I said, it's black and white, straightforward. There's no nuance. This is kind of where we have to be. Unfortunately, in our current state of affairs, right? Peace through strength, right? You could be a country of 100 million people the size and within the size of the United States, but you still have to defend yourselves, right? You still have to defend yourselves. Remember, we have one more stop on this journey, and it's the season finale, right? Episode 8, the final guardrail, keeping the military minimal, right? We've built the fortress. Now, how do we make sure it never turns into a prison? We'll look at the constitutional emergency brakes that keep the shield of liberty in its place. Until next time, y'all, remember, stay vigilant, stay free, love your neighbors, love your family, but ultimately, love yourself. Until next time, y'all.